So, Gabby, let's start with this horrible terror attack in Manchester. At least 22 people have been killed, many children at a concert, I guess, as people were exiting. A British citizen who apparently, on behalf of ISIS, blew himself up and, like I say, killing almost dozens and injuring dozens more. Um, Give us a sense of, is this a situation where there is action that can be taken, and who would be? It's pretty clear who would be the plaintiffs, but who would be defendants in this situation?
Right. So, interestingly, this attack was quite sophisticated. And so most likely there's a network of support for this attack. And therefore the legal theory is that those people who are conspiring with a terrorist or providing a necessary or what's called material support or funding for a terrorist, then they become liable under the law for the damages the terrorists cause. In Chicago, in the Seventh Circuit, the court compared it to handing a loaded gun to a toddler. That if you go ahead and do that, and there it's even less because there's just negligence of why someone would do something like that, not some kind of motivation. But whoever does that, it's so foreseeable the damages that could be caused that they're liable. In these situations, someone is providing assistance to terrorists for either because they ideologically are aligned with the terrorists, or on the other hand, that they just don't care what the terrorists do if they can turn a profit for some reason, let's say by illegally facilitating funding by money laundering. It so happens that I'm in the process right now of bringing a lawsuit in England on behalf of victims of terrorist attacks against some British and Swiss banks who knowingly and intentionally laundered money for organizations that were engaged in terrorist attacks that killed Brits outside of England. And this will be a case of first suppression. In England, they don't have the laws that we have in America, like the Anti-Terrorism Act, which protects Americans worldwide. But the team of barristers and solicitors that I've built have come to the conclusion that the British law, which is based on common law, that under the age-old tort law provisions, that we can pull this case together. And our hope also is that this case will energize the Parliament to go ahead and pass some kind of laws similar to the laws in the United States, similar to the Anti-Terrorism Act. So in Manchester, for sure, this guy had all kinds of facilitation to do what he did. What I read so far, and the details are sketchy, but it looks like the explosives and were not commercial grade, but were military grade, which means that somehow there was smuggling involved or something, and all these things cost money. So somebody is bankrolling it, and usually it's not the guys who are blowing themselves up.
And usually they're aware that they're bankrolling it? I mean, in other words, when you talk, I mean, to what extent does a bank, let's say, have responsibility for these things? I mean, I know in certain instances they clearly know what they're doing, but how important is that in terms of these suits, and how do you prove that?
Yeah. First of all, it's absolutely important. Negligently handling bank accounts is not going to create liability under the law for the bank for what the account holder, in this case, let's say a terrorist, does. If they were merely negligent, they didn't look good enough. They didn't have sufficient procedures in place to know your customer, rules, and so on, that's going to be a case that's pretty much impossible to bring. It's where they know that who they're dealing with is either been designated as a terrorist organization, or there's overwhelming indications that something illegal is going on. The bank doesn't have to know what illegal activity is going on if they know or must have known is like should have known. If they must have known that this was a criminal enterprise, they didn't know if it was drug dealers or if it was terrorists or if it was, human traffickers and slavery, but they knew that something was wrong. Then they're gonna be able to held accountable. And that's the cutting thing that you have to show. Now, your question is amazing, because how can anyone prove what someone else knows? You can't, unless someone tells you what they know. And obviously these people are not going to do that. And they're certainly not going to incriminate themselves, because that knowledge could be could expose them to criminal liability. So what you have to prove is they must have known it, that they should have known it. And that is like constructive knowledge, that they knew it because they willfully blinded themselves, and therefore they really did know it. But and if you can prove that, then you win the case. So those are the two things that you need to prove, is that they must have known, and that it was foreseeable, that the resulting harm was foreseeable. And so therefore they would have known that this could lead to that, and that brings them to the doorstep of liability.
Okay, so we've established that dynamic. Now, and of course, President Trump this week visited Saudi Arabia. When we come back, I want to talk about what the Saudis are hoping to get from Donald Trump. We've heard that we know there were news reports earlier in the week about the arms deal, and Jared Kushner getting them a little bit of a break from Boeing and making this $100 billion at least arms deal, and then hundreds of billions of other dollars in deals. When we come back, let's talk about that's their give. Let's talk about what their get they hope to be, and it involves terrorism statutes that were passed at the end of the Obama administration. We got to take a quick break. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio. We'll be right back.